Hello and welcome everyone to the next Foreman community demo, which is going to be an unusual demo today because we don't have any presenters. It's unfortunate, but it seems everyone's very busy today. I guess holiday season is approaching and just quiet time all around. So, I made a lot of noise. I tried hard. I do post to everyone to say come and join us in the demo, but sadly today we don't have any presenters except me. So I'm going to show you what I've been working on because I don't get to do that very often. Quite often we have a very busy demo and there just isn't space, right? And it's more interesting to see what the developers are up to than what I get up to, which isn't always so interesting. So today I'm going to walk you through some work I've been doing to try and solve a problem that we have in the Foreman community. Well, I think we've got a problem anyway. There's no slides for this. I'm kind of doing this ad hoc because I was hoping we would have some presenters, but sadly we don't. So I'm kind of making this up as I go. So there's no slides. I'm going to do this kind of live to some amount of planning. I don't have planning, right? What do I know about planning? I'm just a community person. So yeah, I'm going to show you a problem that I think we have with the community. It's to do with bugs. It's to do with Redmine, and I'm just trying to get a browser set up here so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So let me head over to Redmine. Let's see, projects.theforeman.org. There we go. Let me get that shared for you. Okay, so this is Redmine. You all know it, I'm sure, by now. And let me just remind us of the current situation. If I go to Foreman Core and I go to Issues and I say Filter on Open Issues and scroll to the bottom of the page, look at this number down here. It's very small. I'll make it a bit bigger. 2,663 open issues. This is not a good number. It's certainly not a number that I like as a community person, and I've been trying to think of ways to deal with this. Now, let's put a little history in here. We have tried over the years many ways to try and fix this. Usually it boils down to repeated attempts to get a good triage process going. And that has never historically worked out. We just haven't been able to get that sort of critical mass of triage process going. And I think it's at least partly just due to the soul-crushing expectation that we're going to have to get through all of these bugs somehow. And it's just too much, right? It's just like you get through like 15 bugs in a triage session and suddenly you realize just how long it's going to take to go through this backlog. And then nobody wants to come to the second triage session, so you have less people, and then nobody sees the point of coming to the third triage session, and by the fourth one nobody turns up. And so we've tried this multiple times and it just doesn't work. So I've been trying to think about ways to tackle this problem, and I think it's going to take a fairly joined up set of projects to make it work. Let me just I just want to show you one other number. If I just filter here on the category and I set it as where is it? It's category is not set, so category none, that's what I want. So uncategorized bugs, again, 548 of these are uncategorized. So even if we focused on things that nobody else has looked at, like presumably have not been triaged in some way, it's not getting better, right? Even just the thought of going through nearly 600 bugs in your triage sessions is bad enough before you start thinking about 2,500. And this is just Foreman Core, right? Before we even think about all the plugins that we're supposed to look after as well. So this is pretty crazy. And I think we need to come up with a kind of joined up approach to try and deal with it. I can't say what we're going to do is definitely going to work, but this is the discussion I want to have, is whether or not my suggestions will have some effect. And I've got 3 suggestions, all of which have consequences, but I think on balance might be worth doing. And the 3 things go like this. Firstly, we need to reduce the number of bugs, right? We might just, I don't like this very much. I don't like irritating community members. I don't like closing valid bugs. But we have, like, if I just go back to the 2,500, right, and I flip this around and sort by, let's see, where's created? I'll just sort by updated. Right, let me flip that around to be the oldest first. 2011, 7 years ago. We release every quarter, so 7 years. I mean, okay, we have the occasional slowdown, but if you go with 4 releases a year, then 7, what's that, 6.5 years ago is 624, something like 20 odd releases, right? It's like before 1.0. I have a great deal of difficulty believing that many of these things are still valid. Now, if that's true, we can close them. But the problem is no one's going to spend the time going through 2,500 open bugs to decide if they're valid. So if we do this, we have to do it as a mass close. I don't like that very much, but I'm slowly coming around to the conclusion that it might be necessary. It's the sort of thing that does upset me, and I don't like having to do it. But yeah, we might have to. Now, I have a tool I've been generated to help us explore that a little bit. So this is the same data. The data is a little bit out of date. It was generated a few weeks ago. So it shows 2,300 bugs instead of 2,600 or whatever, but you know, similar numbers. But on the right here, this is the Foreman core bugs split by category. And so you can see we've got, you know, Catello, integration and power management and compute resources and things like this, right? Now, the first thing we'll note is that we've got way too many categories, and that's the second point I'm going to come on to about categories. But for now, just thinking about open bugs and whether we can close a lot of old ones, what this slider is how old do you want to go? How much of a cutoff should we use? So if you have no cutoff at all, this is set to the oldest possible bug, then, you know, we close 0 bugs, and the distribution sits at around nearly 3 years as the average age of a bug, which is pretty rubbish. And on the right, what you see here is median information. So it shows you kind of the distribution of bug ages. So you can look at something like, if I look at like compute resources VMware, that's quite variable. But if I look at something like notifications, which is quite new, then actually that's quite, you know, it's quite compact. It's a much smaller bar. Note this is a logarithmic scale, so you have 1 year down here at the bottom, and then 2 years, 3 years actually get quite close together. So up here you're looking at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old over here. Now that's some old stuff. Now if I set this to something that I think is reasonable and say let's go for about a year, right? So if I go for 52 weeks. There we go. So that would close nearly 2,000 bugs. Brings the average down to just over half a year, which I think is more realistic. That's a couple of releases. We only support 2 releases, right? So if the average age of a bug was 2 releases long, which is 2 quarters, 26 weeks, that seems realistic. And you can see that a lot of the categories actually disappear entirely. Like, you know, these ones have no bugs in them, which implies they're quite old. But then again, you know, I have difficulty believing that performance reports have just gone away by themselves, right? So some of this might need further investigation. And so, you know, the distributions obviously look roughly the same, but in a lot of cases, they disappear entirely. So do I think this is a good idea? I don't like it. As I've already said, I don't like closing bugs that are valid, and the only way we can make this work is if we close them without looking, right? We do a mass update, we write a very nice message that says we're doing a cleanup of the bug database. We're very sorry if we've closed a bug that you think is still valid, and please do reopen it if that's the case. But just in order to make this even slightly possible, we've had to mass close a lot of bugs. I don't like having to do that, but I feel like we might have reached the point where we have no choice in order to try and get this under control. So that's one option. That's one thing we can do. The next thing we can do is to talk about the number of categories. I think if you look at everything, we have 63 categories at the moment. Well, it might be down. I mean, Tomer and I looked at this a couple of weeks ago, and I think he got rid of a couple, so it might only be like 60 now. That's too many. It's too many on a number of levels. It's too many for new users, right? If someone comes and reports a bug, they're not going to sit there and look at a list of 60 categories and decide where to put the bug. They're just not going to bother. Or they're going to get it wrong, which is equally likely. I think the odds of a person who's new to Foreman filing a bug and getting it in the right place are pretty small at the moment. So that's a problem. But I think it's also a problem from a development point of view. Nobody really knows what they own to some debate. And even for me, like knowing the differences between these categories is quite difficult. These are not alphabetically sorted, which I could get a list of, I guess. But, you know, we've got authorization as one category and authentication as another. Now, I know in my head those words mean different things, but still, if I got a bug that was in that kind of area, would I know for sure which one of the two to put it in? I don't think I would. So we have to think about whether we can bring this down a bit. And I have something to show about that in a minute. And then the third thing, oh, actually, let me do that. Let me show that. So I need to find an unused desktop for a start. Here we go. So let me just fire up our studio. So I've been looking at this from a sort of data point of view to try and think about how to handle this. And so let me screen share my RStudio session. Where does not want to. Interesting. That's very odd. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on there. That was unexpected. Let's bring this up. No, it's not happy about that at all, which is very strange. I wonder why it doesn't like sharing RStudio. I make this difficult to present. No, it does not like that at all. That's not good. I can't really show you this stuff if I can't show you what I've been working on. All right, I'll just share my whole session, which means you'll get to see a horrible mess of stuff. Actually, I know what I can do. I can kill one of my monitors. That'll work. You can tell this is well practiced, right? Let's see, a render. We'll turn off that one. Bring everything over here. Better? Okay. So now if I screen share, are we still here? Something weird going on. Oh, there it goes. I think it's catching up. Share my entire screen. Can someone sound off in like chat if you can hear me? Because my laptop has just slowed down massively. I don't know why. Let's try that. So that's right. There we go. So hopefully you can see my RStudio session now. And I'm going to open up chat on my phone so I can tell the difference. Yes, good. Okay. So hopefully you can see my RStudio session. If someone could confirm that, that'd be great. So this is a project I've been working on to try and look at other ways to clean up the bug database. And in particular, let's start with this file here. This is my cleanup categories script, which is looking at merging categories together. And basically, by doing things like bringing all of the compute resources into a single category and merging things that look kind of the same, so dashboards, notifications, statistics, etc., merging them into web interface, merging DB migrations into database. All of these things are a logging type thing. Catella is a type of plugin, so let's put that under plugins. Everything here is kind of vaguely provisioning related, and so on, right? So I can post this to the forum later. So, you know, we can have a discussion, but I'd like to have a discussion about what categories we really need in Foreman Core, because I think it's better for users to have a smaller list to choose from, potentially, as I'll come on to in my third part, and maybe having nothing to choose from for reasons I'll explain in a sec. But also having developers having less to worry about there as well. It's like there's less cognitive load there. And also when you come to triage, it's also important to have, you know, make triage a quick process. And again, if you've got to sit there and decide which of 60 categories to put a bug in, triage takes a very long time. And equally, you know, we've got only so many developers. If you have more categories than developers, some categories are never going to get looked at, right? Ideally, we want to portion these out to people and make, you know, certain teams or certain groups of people responsible for the bugs in a certain category and make sure they're getting looked at. then you kind of need a smaller number of categories. So that's a thing. So the first part of the conversation is about closing all bugs. The second part of the conversation is about cleaning up our category list. The third part is about uncategorized bugs. And this is really where I think we can do something interesting. At least I think it's interesting because I've been doing statistics for the last year, right? I've been trying to build a bug classifier based solely on the text of a bug. So let me, that's my, somewhere around here, I've got my, that's not it. Screen editor. What have I done with my Chromium session? It's here somewhere. Here it is. So let's go back to too many desktops, right? So let's go back to the issues list and remind ourselves that of what a bug actually looks like. I'm sure you all know, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here's an example bug added 8 years ago. That's not a great example. So let's not do ones that are that old. Let's get a reasonably new one. Here we go. So let's get one about React. That sounds good. Okay, so this has no category set. Good start. But what's interesting here? Well, for a start, there's absolutely no body on this as well, which is not a great example either. I'm going to explain why that's a problem in a minute. Let's have a look at this one from Rahul. Here we go. So we have a description and we have a title and we have a bunch of fields, right? Now, if I put developers to one side for a minute and think about the average person submitting a bug, there's only really two fields here that are trustworthy. The first is the title and the second is the body. Everything else that you see here can't really be trusted when it comes from a user. Not that I don't trust my users, but they're not to be expected to know things like target versions, difficulty, Bugzilla length, priorities. Why would they know that, right? So if I'm going to build a classifier and try and fix a bunch of uncategorized bugs, reminder, we had nearly 600 uncategorized bugs. And, you know, Rahul's one of our developers, and he's not bothering to put categories in either. So, you know, it's not just users that are having a problem with the list of categories. If we build a classifier, we can only use text to do it, right? And there's a number of ways you can do this. And I've tried a couple. Basically, broadly speaking, there's two ways you can do it. You can give it the list of categories and say, build for this outcome. Like, here's a bunch. So what you do is you take a large number of closed bugs. I think I've got 3,000 bugs going back by maybe about 5 years, basically. And then I've taken those bugs, taken the subjects and the titles and what category they're in, and then tried to build a classifier that predicts that outcome based on text analysis. So you can do it that way. The other way you can do it, which might be interesting for point 2 about collapsing down the number of categories, is that you can not tell it what the categories are. You can say, hey, there are n themes here, and just use an index, a number from 1 to n, and let it go and classify to that many themes and see if it can get it right that way. And I've got example graphs of both somewhere. But I think I might need, no, I'm gonna have to rebuild the model. Unless it's here already. Have I got fit? No, I haven't got the fit. I've got the control. Okay, I'm gonna let this build. But it helps if you load all the libraries, right? We can talk a bit more while I let it. It only takes a short amount of time to build this model because it's not very complex. So here we go. Oh, no, it didn't like that at all. Got a lot of nouns. Stop that. What we got here? Okay. Something odd. Has it not got the train? No, the training's right. Yeah, this all looks like it should be correct. I'll just run the whole model. Start from here. So you see live coding, right? Live coding is good fun. Right, I don't have my so temp.issues CSV comes direct from Redmine. I have a script that generates it. So we'll assume we don't have that, but we do have data, and I can execute everything after that line. Okay, so straight up I get a nice graph of category distribution you can see here. And so it does tell us that the categories are not equal, and this gives us some potentials for yeah, so hang on, I'm just looking at comments in chat now. Was it a link? Did I put a link to an old demo? Okay, my apologies for that. I'll fix that in the forum afterwards. There's a lot of copy and paste involved in each demo, so no. The URL should be there somewhere. Okay, fine. it's all good. Right, so categories. Yes, you can see it's not evenly distributed. So these smaller categories are things that potentially could be merged, although there are arguments to say you should keep them, right? I'm pretty sure we should have a security category, even though there's not a lot of bugs in it. In fact, I'd probably take it as a certain mark of pride that there are not many bugs in it. But, you know, anyway. So this is one thing we get. Right now the model's building. But what you're going to see here, this is going to predict, it's going to draw as a graph of the predicted category for a given bug versus the actual category that it was in. So we're still using closed bugs. We're not trying to use new bugs here. And what you'll see is that it's only really good. I've got it down to about 20 categories using the map that I showed you earlier, using this map here. So I apply this to the data set before we run any kind of algorithms on it. And that way you've only got these 20 categories that you see in the graph. But what you'll see even then, it's only really good for about 5 or 6 of those categories. And beyond that, it just can't tell. And I think there's a combination here of, one, we don't always put bodies in our bugs. Look at the 2 I just tried to pull out of Redmine as examples there. One had a very short body, one had no body at all. And that makes it really hard to classify. And then the other is simply that in some cases, these are going to look quite similar, right? So, you know, if I think about development tools, Foreman debug, and to some extent rake tasks, they're all kind of coding related things rather than say UI related things. They are going to look to some extent similar. So they can be quite hard to differentiate. However, now we come on to my final point. I don't think it matters. The accuracy I've managed to get so far is in the region of 60% average, although it's much higher for some categories and much lower for other categories. But if we were to take an attitude that triage is everybody's problem, and we don't necessarily hold regular triage sessions for in the way that we used to, there will still be a need for triage, but it will be different. But if instead we say, if you see a bug in the wrong place, put it in the right place, and that's not too hard to do because we've reduced the number of categories. So hopefully it's a matter of a few seconds to hit edit because you're looking at your category, the bit that you spend most of your time doing, and you see a bug and it's not appropriate for that category. Then if it's quick for you to do that in, say, under 30 seconds, to just quickly parse the bug and understand roughly what it is, and then put it in the right place, or even just in another place that you think is right, because if everybody does this, then it doesn't matter if the thing has to be moved a couple of times. So long as the accuracy on the classifier is reasonable, then we can apply this on a regular basis to everything in uncategorized. And this allows us quite a lot of flexibility. It allows users to basically not have to pick a category, and we'll just assign it afterwards. It allows the triage process to be spread over everybody across all time zones, because that's the other problem we have when we try and organize triage sessions, is that we're all very geographically distributed, so we can't get everybody in one place. So that spreads that load. We would still have a core triage team to deal with, to look at new issues in any category, or perhaps to go through old issues and start closing them, because this will be much less of a problem now if you know that the newer ones are to some extent being taken care of. And finally, it also brings down that number of categories. Everybody's kind of looking at the same page. I like the idea, but I don't know if I'm just completely smoking something random and you all think this is a terrible idea. So that's what I've been trying to do. This fit is taking a while, unfortunately. There is another one I can run once this one's done. So the other method, as I said, was unstructured classification, where you get it to pick the themes, and it's a different way of seeing that it really can't tell, at least with 20 categories. So one way we could approach that is to say, for the classifier, we only allow it to pick from, say, 5 to 10 categories. We still have 20 odd categories in Redmine, but it's only allowed to assign to a subset of those. Which is, you know, broad. Like, it's like doing subcategories, right? You have like 5 top level categories and some subcategories underneath. And if Redmine could support that, that would be great. I haven't actually looked. Let's have a look while we wait for this model to build. Not that one. Here we go. Oh, I'm not logged in. Let me get logged in. Nope, not that one. See, this is where I have to be very careful. I can open my password manager because KeePass doesn't actually show passwords, although it does let you know all of the various services that we use for all sorts of interesting things, right? Redmine, here we go. Right, so no, let's have a look here. Settings. Nobody watches these videos anyway, right? So it's good. So it's fine. Oh no, I have to go on the projects, don't I? Foreman. So we have categories. Here we go. So if you edit a category, right, can you have a subcategory? No, you can have an assignee. That could be fun. We could set assignees for all of these as well. So you can't do subcategories. Maybe I should look for a plugin that could do that, because it'd be really nice if both users and the classifier were to use some high-level categories, and as developers, we could move them into more specific subcategories thereafter. That would be really, really nice. So yeah, that's a thought for the future. Now let's see if this is finished building yet. It has not. It's still taking forever. Okay, I thought I had this saved in my workspace, but I didn't, so I'm not going to run that. We will, however, run this one because this one's nice and quick, although it doesn't work if you do that. Oh, interesting. Let's just do this is the unstructured classifier, which shouldn't take very long, a couple of minutes, I think, because of the way we're doing it. Now, in this case, I'm telling it to use the correct number of categories, like however many categories we are, try and pick that many themes. But yeah, it'll take a minute or two. Good. So, right, let me recap while that's running. So we could close a lot of old bugs. We probably should reduce the number of categories, and we probably should do something about the number of unclassified bugs, which is stupidly high. And taken together, plus socializing the idea that triage is everybody's problem, and if you see a bug in the wrong place, you should move it. To me, that feels like a potential approach for trying to get a handle on how bad Redmine has gotten over the years, and to try and get it under control. Because we close a lot of bugs, actually. When you get... Stop bringing up the games I play in my lunchtime. You know, if we go and look at this graph here, this will take a sec to load. You know, this is the open and closed graph over like all time for Foreman, right? There we go. And if I say like over the last, let's say the last 6 months, so 2018, 06, 01, right? And I do that for core. You know, there's only a net increase of 1 bug every 3 days, right? That's much lower than it used to be. We do get through a lot of bugs, but we're never going to get through this backlog if we don't figure out a way of getting a handle on it and making it easier to deal with. And I'm sure there's valuable stuff in there that we could work on that we just don't even know exists or we've forgotten about. So yeah, this is one of the things that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. I would love to know your thoughts. I will try and write this up and get it on the forum so we can have a nice discussion about it. And I can link to this video for people who want the full explanation. But, oh, hang on, my GPU is shut up, which means it's probably finished. Yes, here we go. So this is what happens when you do unstructured analysis of our bug database. Now, what you want to see is something like what's happened with internationalization, or perhaps where's web, yeah, or development tools, for example. What you really want is one single high spike and all the others low. So what you're basically saying is things that we classified in this category, this number here, so this is 11, things that we assigned topic ID 11 all happen to have the label of development tools when we went back and look in the original data set. So that's what we're doing. We're taking just the titles and the subjects and giving them a number based on, you know, text analysis, and then we're going back to the original data set and building a consensus as to how many, you know, what percentage, or not percentage, but there's a scoring system basically. And so you want 1 spike per number and every single number used just once. That's your ideal outcome from an analysis like this. Of course, that's not what we see because our stuff is really messy, and a lot of the bugs look very similar. Now, I can clean this up if we think this is a good way to go and we like the idea of having a classifier running on Redmine. I can make this work on a regular basis. We can retrain it and so on. But for now, it would be probably at best about 60% accurate. And it's likely to put things into the web interface or provisioning categories that probably don't belong there. Whereas the others, it would probably get right if it chose to put something there, but it's more likely to get it wrong and put it in one of the larger categories. And that's okay for the time being. And as long as we get better at logging bugs, because we know this is happening now, then this is going to get better over time as well. Anyway, so that's a half-hour demo of some of the project work I've been doing in the background. So, you know, I'm not just sitting around reading abstracts for config management talks. I do try and do some work occasionally. So your thoughts are welcome. I'm going to just check chat and see if anyone's dropped anything in while we've been talking. Yep, there's not a lot been added. Someone pointing out that there's probably open source analysis tools, and you're right, there probably are. And I'd be interested to know how they've done their stuff, but I did this because I'm interested in it, right? And it's fun to learn, and there's other ways you can apply this stuff. I was chatting with somebody yesterday about whether or not you could detect duplicate issues, but duplicate issues are a much harder problem, right? Because you have to be able to handle some variation from issue to issue. Too much, and you declare things to be duplicates that are not. Too little, and you won't catch the subtle variations between how one person reports a problem and how the next person reports a problem. So I suspect that's very, very hard to solve. But this isn't too hard to solve. And I will say that the accuracy of this can be made better. At the moment, if we look at how I'm dealing with it, I'm getting rid of words like this. So, you know, gems, lib, Ruby 193, this kind of thing. You know, Ruby on Rails 4.2 or 5.1, things that come into our SCLs, things that show up all the time. You know, user share Foreman is in every single person's stack trace, right? So stripping that out helps. And there are other things you can strip out as well. If I got somewhere in here, I will have, where is it? That's the gamma. Can I plot gamma? Let me just, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do at all. I'll just show you this. I think it's quite useful. I definitely had, no, that's the category stuff. That's not what I want. Somewhere is my top terms. Yes, here it is, top terms. Oh, you have to actually get the top terms as well. Let's do that. Topics, terms, and we'll graph the terms. Here we go. So this is by number. So again, you still have to go back and decide what number applies to which category, right? But even within this, you can see some of the things come up. So there's a lot of numbers that could probably be stripped. I thought I'd already stripped. Hang on a minute. What's happened here? No, that should be right. I thought I'd already stripped Ruby on Rails 4.1. That's interesting that that's turned up. Probably some tokenizing problem. So you can see that a lot of these things come up differently. So yeah, I've got no arch over here. I've got like callback stuff here. This looks like it's mostly date-related things. I'm guessing that's probably the website category. This has got Puppet in it, so it's probably config management category, and so on. So I can make this a lot cleaner yet, and it will be more accurate once we do. But yeah, it's just a matter of time, and I've been distracted by other projects in the last couple of weeks. So there you go. Fun text analysis of bugs. One way to fill a demo when nobody turns up, right? In the meantime, however, thanks very much. I'll take this to the forum. We can continue the debate, and hopefully we can come up with a plan for cleaning up Redmine, because I really do feel like we should. I really feel like we need to come up with a plan for that. Oh, that's got Vagrant. Number 3's got Vagrant in it. I bet you that's to do with like forklift and stuff, right? Yes, we need a plan. So thank you for watching. Hope you have a great break for the holidays, if you're having a break for the holidays. It's not obviously worldwide. But in the meantime, the next demo will not be until January, because all the people who do the demos are probably busy. And certainly if there's someone here to do the demo, there probably won't be very many presenters. So until January, until 2019, this has been the last Foreman community demo of 2018. Thank you very much for watching. Do take care.